Well, I met Sheldon Adelson through Kirk Kerkorian. Kirk Kerkorian was the founder of MGM and was the man who sold the Sands to Sheldon. And that's how Sheldon got his start in Las Vegas. It was acquiring that property from Mr. Kerkorian. I joined MGM back in 1998. I got to know Sheldon after we acquired Mirage Resorts back in 2000. So, and I became the chairman and CEO of MGM in 2008. So I knew Sheldon fairly well for the last 20 odd years. And I particularly knew many of the people that work for him, particularly over the last 10. Well, uh, my reaction is sadness for his family and also recognition of what he had contributed to not only Las Vegas, my home, but global hospitality. Uh, Sheldon was a very complicated person. It's a kind of a study in contrast. He could be incredibly audacious, very aggressive on one hand, and on the other, very kind, very generous, very philanthropic. Uh, we have too few visionaries left. He was one of the visionaries of Las Vegas. He sits at pantheon of people like Kirk Kerkorian and others that became the fathers of our town. And his legacy will endure because of his philanthropic works, as well as what he accomplished with tens of thousands of employees. We certainly would not have been the convention town that we became. It was Sheldon's passion around the convention business, building the large convention center that he built, that stimulated Mandalay Bay to build its large convention center. The fact that Mandalay Bay built that convention center was a major reason why when I was working at MGM, bought Mandalay Bay. And Las Vegas has invested, billions of dollars in the convention business. And a lot of that has to do with Sheldon Adelson. We would not have that dominance in conventions without him. And without that dominance, we would not have had the diversity of customers visiting Las Vegas that Las Vegas, up until the pandemic, was enjoying and will enjoy again as we emerge from the pandemic. So without Sheldon, we would not have that component of our business. And also, I have to say that very competitive, aggressive people like Sheldon bring out the best in people. I could tell you, I, for one, feel like I was more energized. I know that the men and women of the community, were invigorated by his competitiveness, and we wanted to compete too. And the other element is that he employed tens of thousands of people, and these men and women have gone on to become really important, significant contributors in our community. And I couldn't even imagine how many people, how many lives were touched by Sheldon Adelson, but it's in the hundreds of thousands of people in Las Vegas alone. And for that reason, he'll be forever remembered for that. He certainly contributed to the growth of it. I remember very vividly, I was in town when people were ridiculing him, criticizing him, demeaning his vision for the Venetian. And I remember going to my boss, Kirk Kerkorian, and Mr. Kerkorian said something that's always stuck with me. He said that, Jim, anytime anyone is willing to invest their intellectual capital and their money to grow Las Vegas, it's good for all of us. It makes us all better. The tide will rise and we'll all float higher. That was Kirk's philosophy. It was not every competitor's philosophy in Las Vegas. Many people in town believe that the only way you can win if someone else is losing. And that wasn't the philosophy of Mr. Krikorian. And so we just dialed up our game. We tried to be better. And I think we became better because of Sheldon Adelson. And we certainly recognized the value in what he was bringing from a food and beverage, a sweet product, a convention product to the town. And if you think about the investments that MGM made over the last 20 odd years, it was very much non-gaming centric. It was building better hotels, bigger rooms, more restaurants, more theaters, more convention space. Then we built arenas. It's all to diversify the customers beyond simply a gaming customer. And it truly now is a place we can all say where many people go to Las Vegas that have no interest in gambling. And that's completely okay because there's so many other things to do. Without Sheldon Adelson, we would not have propelled ourselves to the degree we did as a community. I was very drawn to his competitiveness and his courage. Courage is a word that people throw around like it's just any other type of word, but it means something more. And I saw a lot of courage in what he did. It inspired me. And I saw that in the eyes of so many people in Las Vegas. I'm thinking of the Great Recession in 2008 and 2009, when everyone counted Las Vegas out. It was courage that got our community through that. I think of the unspeakable act of evil on 1 October, and it was courage that got our community through that horrible time. He personified courage. And I got to say, I didn't agree with him a lot. We had very different perspectives on politics. We had very different perspectives on approach to business. We were on the other side of many issues, sometimes pretty passionately against one another on issues, but you always knew where Sheldon stood. You didn't have to agree with it, but he wasn't going to lie to you. A handshake meant everything to him. A deal was a deal to him. And you know where you stood with him. And I admire all that, even though I disagreed with many other aspects of what he was doing. He was his own man. He made his own decisions. He didn't much care a lot about what people thought about decisions he made. I've gotten older, I've become a little more philosophical. And I know that people are imperfect, and I'm imperfect. I feel that what he contributed in Las Vegas should never be diminished and minimized. And it's easy to criticize people that put themselves out there. And I'm not a big fan of criticizing people that put themselves out there. It's generally comes from people that don't do much with themselves, that criticize what others have done. So again, I didn't agree with his politics, particularly later in his life. I didn't agree with a lot of stands. I was very vocal on another political perspective, but I'm a Nevadan first, and anything that's good for Nevada, I'm all for. And Sheldon Adelson was good for Nevada. He invested his money, he built businesses, he contributed, he built schools, he invested in healthcare. He contributed to the benefit of our state, and I hope that's what he's remembered for. I remember when my idol died, when Kirk Krikorian died, and I remember how lost I felt. I lost a North Star for me. So my thinking is around that is there's so many people that Sheldon was their North Star. And I think we should think about them, the men and women that worked for him or did work for him, or the families that he touched. and at least honor that, if nothing else, that he meant a lot to a lot of people.